You've been disgusting to me since our first night, Sophia declared, her voice slicing through the ambient chatter of the upscale restaurant. Several heads turned our way, wine glasses paused midway to lips. The waiter who had been approaching with our anniversary champagne froze mid-stride, uncertainty written across his face. I smiled, not the practiced smile I used in courtrooms to reassure juries, but the genuine one that comes when puzzle pieces suddenly lock into place. The smile that had made hardened criminals confess after hours of denials. "Honey," I said, calmly folding my napkin, "that's quite an anniversary toast." Her eyes narrowed with undisguised contempt. A flush of anger crept up her neck, turning her skin crimson against the white gold necklace I'd given her that morning, a gift she'd accepted with a kiss that now felt like the ultimate deception. "Don't patronize me, Daniel." Her fingers tightened around her wine glass so intensely I thought it might shatter. And that's when I started to act. "My name is Daniel Ross, 45 years old, assistant district attorney with a spotless record. They call me the Confessor because I can make even the most hardened criminals crack under questioning. 15 years building a reputation as incorruptible, methodical, and relentless. 15 years married to Sophia, political strategist extraordinaire, the woman who could sell ice to Eskimos and make them thank her for the privilege. Sophia, 43, had built her career crafting public images for politicians. She could transform the most despicable candidate into a champion of the people overnight. For her, truth was malleable, just another narrative tool. I'd always known we approached the world differently, but I never imagined she'd use her skills against me. 3 weeks before our disastrous anniversary dinner, Martin Ramirez, my key witness in the Holloway corruption case, had vanished without a trace. The timing seemed bizarre. Why now when we were so close to indictment? But sitting across from my wife, watching hatred spill from her like overflowing champagne, everything crystallized. The missing witness, the Holloway case, her mayoral candidate, James Holloway himself, the man whose corruption I'd been investigating for 2 years. "Let's not make a scene," I said, signaling for the check. "We can discuss this at home." "There's nothing to discuss," Sophia hissed. "I've spent 15 years married to a man who sees the world as black and white, guilty or innocent. You've never understood the nuance of what I do. Creating nuanced images for corrupt politicians?" I kept my voice low, controlled. "Creating viable candidates who can actually accomplish things." Her hand trembled as she reached for her wine. "James will do more good for this city in 4 years than your righteousness ever will." The waiter approached with nervous steps, sensing the tension. I handed him my credit card without looking away from my wife. "And Martin Ramirez? Was he just collateral damage in your crusade for the greater good?" Her silence was more damning than any confession I'd ever extracted. "Let's go," I said, standing as the waiter returned with the receipt. "This isn't the place." In the car, the silence stretched between us like crime scene tape. I drove mechanically, mind racing through evidence, connections, possibilities. The assistant district attorney in me was already building a case. The husband in me was dying. "How did you find out about his daughter's immigration status?" I asked finally, turning onto our street lined with maple trees we'd watched grow for 15 years. Sophia stared straight ahead. "You talk in your sleep sometimes." Such a simple answer, such a catastrophic breach. All those nights I'd come home exhausted, case files swirling in my head, murmuring fragments of strategy into my pillow while she lay beside me, not sleeping, but listening, gathering intelligence. Our house came into view, colonial style. 4 bedrooms we'd never filled with children. A front porch where we used to drink wine on summer evenings while discussing our days, our cases, our strategies. "You blackmailed him," I said, pulling into the driveway. It wasn't a question. I protected my client. No denial, no apology. The political strategist to the core. I turned off the engine. "You obstructed justice. You tampered with a witness. You betrayed—" "Don't you dare make this personal," she snapped. "This is politics. This is how the world actually works, Daniel. Not everyone has the luxury of your moral high ground." I got out of the car, walked around, and opened her door. A gentleman even now, even here at the end. "Politics doesn't exempt you from the law, Sophia. You should know that, being married to me." She stepped out, her expensive dress shimmering under the porch light. Is that a threat, Daniel? You'd prosecute your own wife? I looked at her, really looked at her, and wondered how 15 years of marriage could evaporate so completely in a single evening. No, Sophia, it's a promise. I met Sophia Winters at a fundraising gala for the district attorney's re-election campaign. I was 30 then, 7 years into what colleagues already called a meteoric rise in the prosecutor's office. I'd made my reputation on corruption cases, meticulously building evidence mountains that made defense attorneys wilt. She approached me at the bar, stunning in a blue dress that matched her campaign button. She was working for my boss's opponent. So you're the infamous Daniel Ross, she said, accepting the champagne I offered. The man they call the confessor. I smiled, charmed by her directness. Only the guilty need to fear confession. Everyone's guilty of something, she replied with a smile that suggested she'd make an excellent confessor herself. The difference is whether you get caught and who's telling your story when you do. That was Sophia, pragmatic, brilliant, unflinching. She lost that campaign but gained a reputation for innovative messaging. And somewhere between our debates over justice versus political expediency, we fell in love. Our wedding was small but elegant, a perfect blend of my traditional values and her modern sensibilities. The district attorney was my best man. 3 senators attended on her side. It made the local papers. Justice and politics unite. A Washington power couple emerges. On our wedding night, lying in a tangle of sheets in our hotel suite, I told her about what drove me. There's a moment in every case, I explained, tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. When all the evidence locks together, all the testimonies align, all the financial records tell the same story, it's like watching truth emerge from chaos. That clarity, that's what I live for. She listened, her expression unreadable in the dim light. And the people, the ones caught in your webs of evidence? If they're guilty, they deserve what comes. Justice isn't personal. It's structural. It's necessary. She was quiet for so long I thought she'd fallen asleep. Then, you'd be terrifying as an enemy, Daniel. I laughed and pulled her closer. Good thing you married me then. What I didn't understand, not then, was that she wasn't joking. She was assessing. In her world, everyone was either an asset or an obstacle. That night, lying in my arms, she'd already categorized me as potentially both. The morning after our disastrous anniversary dinner, I arrived at my office earlier than usual. My secretary, Linda, looked surprised to see me at 6:30 a.m. You're in early, boss. Everything okay? Fine, I said, hanging up my coat. I need you to pull everything we have on Holloway's campaign finances and get me the full background on Sophia's consulting firm. Linda raised an eyebrow but asked no questions. 15 years as my secretary had taught her when to probe and when to simply execute. By 7:15, my desk was covered with files, and my computer screen displayed the complex web of Holloway's campaign funding. I wasn't looking for evidence against Holloway anymore. I was looking for Sophia's fingerprints. My office door opened around 9 o'clock. Assistant DA Michael Reeves entered, coffee in hand. You look like hell, he said, settling into the chair across from me. Rough night, I admitted, pushing a file toward him. Need your eyes on this. Holloway's campaign is using shell companies to channel funds. See this one? Meridian Consulting? Michael whistled low. That's Sophia's firm, isn't it? One of them, I confirmed. She has 3. This one doesn't advertise its connection to her primary business. Daniel, Michael leaned forward. Are you investigating your wife, Dio? I met his gaze steadily. I'm investigating obstruction of justice in the Holloway case. My witness was compromised by someone with inside information about his daughter's immigration status. Information only accessible to someone close to me or this office. Michael rubbed his jaw. Jesus, Daniel, you think Sophia... I know Sophia, I interrupted, and last night she practically admitted it. You should recuse yourself, he said immediately. This is a massive conflict of interest. I'm not prosecuting her yet, I replied. I'm just following evidence. And right now, that evidence leads through Holloway's financial labyrinth. Michael looked skeptical. The DA won't let you near this case if your wife's involved. Then we make sure the case is too solid for anyone to dismiss by the time that becomes apparent. I tapped the files and focus on Meridian Consulting. Follow every transaction. If Sophia's compromising witnesses, she's doing it for a reason bigger than just Holloway's reputation. Michael hesitated, then nodded. I'm with you, but Daniel, be careful. This isn't just any opponent. I know exactly who I'm dealing with, I said, turning back to the financial records. That's my advantage. For 3 weeks, I built my case methodically. I worked 16-hour days, barely going home except to shower and change. Sophia noticed, of course, she wasn't stupid, but she seemed to believe I was simply throwing myself into work to avoid our marital problems. Another late night, she'd ask when I came home at midnight, her voice carefully neutral. The Holloway case is falling apart, I'd answer truthfully. I'm trying to salvage it. She'd nod sympathetically, playing the supportive spouse, even as she believed she'd won. Don't work too hard, you can't win them all. But I could, and I would, because while Sophia knew politics, I knew investigations. I discovered that Meridian Consulting had received $2.3 million from Holloway's campaign for strategic communications. Standard enough. But then Meridian had paid $1.7 million to another company called Eastview Analytics for research services. Eastview had no website, no physical address except a P.O. box, and had been incorporated just 3 months before receiving this payment. I pulled corporate records. Eastview's owner was listed as Patricia Winters, Sophia's mother's maiden name. The signature on the incorporation papers matched Sophia's handwriting, with slight deliberate variations. From there, Eastview had made dozens of smaller payments, consulting fees, research stipends, data purchases. One payment stood out, $175,000 to a law firm specializing in immigration cases. I requested a subpoena for the law firm's records, carefully routing it through another ongoing investigation to avoid tipping my hand. The records showed the firm had taken on a pro bono case 3 months earlier. Lucia Ramirez, daughter of Martin Ramirez, my missing witness's daughter. The puzzle pieces were locking together, creating a damning picture. Sophia had created a shadow company to launder campaign funds and use them to secure legal help for Ramirez's daughter. Help that came with strings attached. The timing aligned perfectly with Martin's disappearance. But I needed more. I needed the direct connection that would prove Sophia had blackmailed my witness. I needed someone to talk. Mr. Blake, I said, gesturing to the chair across from my desk. Thank you for coming in voluntarily. Jordan Blake shifted nervously, his expensive suit suddenly seeming too tight. As Holloway's campaign manager, he worked closely with Sophia daily. Sweat beaded along his hairline despite the cool temperature of my office. Of course, Mr. Ross, though I'm not sure how I can help with, what exactly are we discussing? I observed him carefully, noting the slight tremor in his left hand, the way his eyes darted toward the door, classic signs of a man contemplating flight. I'd seen it countless times in this very room. Campaign finance, I said smoothly, sliding a glass of water toward him that he didn't touch. Specifically payments made to Meridian Consulting and subsequently to Eastview Analytics. His expression remained carefully neutral, but a muscle twitched involuntarily at the corner of his mouth. All our financial disclosures are in order. I'm sure they are, I agreed, leaning back in my chair with deliberate casualness. On paper, but I'm more interested in what those payments were actually for. I pulled a manila folder from my desk drawer, letting it fall with a heavy thud that made Blake flinch visibly. Strategic Consulting, he recited. Meridian is your wife's firm, as you know. They're the best in the business. I leaned forward. And Eastview, the company that exists only on paper, the one registered under Sophia's mother's maiden name. Blake's composure cracked slightly. I don't handle the subcontractor relationships. Let me be clear, Mr. Blake, I said, my voice hardening. We have financial records showing $1.7 million flowing from Holloway's campaign through Meridian to Eastview, and from there to various recipients, including an immigration law firm that suddenly took a special interest in the daughter of my key witness against Holloway. That sounds like a question for Sophia, he said, a bead of sweat forming on his temple. It is, and I'll get to her, but right now I'm talking to you because you have a choice to make. I opened a folder and pushed it toward him. These are the penalties for conspiracy to commit witness tampering and misappropriation of campaign funds. 5 to 15 years versus... I closed the folder and opened another. Immunity for cooperation. Blake stared at the immunity agreement. You're investigating your own wife? I'm investigating a corruption, Mr. Blake, as I would always have. Sophia's involvement is unfortunate, but it doesn't change my job. He swallowed hard. And if I cooperate? Full immunity in writing, plus my personal guarantee that your testimony will be sealed until absolutely necessary for trial. She'll know it was me, he whispered. Not if everyone talks, I countered. And trust me, Mr. Blake, when this case breaks open, everyone will be rushing to make a deal. Blake reached for the immunity agreement with trembling fingers. Where do I sign? One by one, I flipped Sophia's people. Her assistant, who had arranged meetings with the immigration attorney, the accountant who had set up Eastview Analytics, the private investigator she'd hired to track Martin Ramirez and gather leverage. Each one gave me another piece of the puzzle. Each one signed an immunity agreement. Each one betrayed Sophia exactly as she'd taught them to betray others, pragmatically, when the cost-benefit analysis tipped against loyalty. I kept the investigation compartmentalized, involving only my most trusted colleagues. I recused myself officially from the Holloway corruption case, citing personal reasons, while continuing to build the witness tampering case against Sophia from the shadows. At home, I maintained the charade of a husband working through marital difficulties. We circled each other like wary boxers, exchanging pleasantries that meant nothing. Holloway's up 5 points in the polls, she mentioned casually over a rare dinner together, 3 months after our anniversary blow-up. Good for him, I replied neutrally. The debate is in 2 weeks, she continued. After that, it's a straight shot to Election Day. The momentum is with us. I nodded, pushing food around my plate. You've done an amazing job with his campaign. Her eyes narrowed slightly, sensing the insincerity but unable to pinpoint its source. Thank you. It's been challenging without the Ramirez distraction. Remarkable how that worked out, I said, meeting her gaze. For a moment, the mask slipped, and I saw calculation behind her eyes. Then she smiled and reached for her wine. Politics is full of lucky breaks. So is prosecution, I replied, raising my glass in a mock toast. To lucky breaks. She clinked her glass against mine, confidence radiating from her. She believed she'd won. She believed I'd accepted defeat. She didn't understand that I was simply waiting for the right moment to strike. 2 days before the debate, I received a call that changed everything. A detective in Arizona had located Martin Ramirez. He was working as a night janitor at a small community college using a different name. His daughter was enrolled there, suddenly the recipient of a full scholarship. He's terrified, the detective reported. Says someone threatened to have his daughter deported if he testified in the Holloway case. Did he say who threatened him? Not specifically, but he mentioned a woman who knew details about his case that weren't public. She showed him photocopies of his daughter's immigration paperwork. Documents, he says, were in your possession. The final piece clicked into place. I'm sending 2 officers to bring him in. Full protection, 24/7 guard. Tell him we'll guarantee his daughter's safety and legal status in exchange for his testimony. Against who? The detective asked. Against my wife, I answered, hanging up. That night, I returned home to find Sophia waiting for me in the living room, a glass of wine in her hand and murder in her eyes. Something interesting happened today, she said, her voice dangerously calm. Jordan Blake canceled our strategy meeting. When I called his assistant, she said he was cooperating with authorities. Strange choice of words, don't you think? I set down my briefcase. Perhaps he's having legal troubles. Don't insult my intelligence, Daniel. She placed her wine glass on the coffee table with exaggerated care. You're building a case against me. I met her gaze steadily. Should I be? You couldn't beat Holloway legitimately, so you're trying to destroy his campaign through me, she accused. It's pathetic. Is that what you think this is about? Winning a case? What else would drive the great Daniel Ross to investigate his own wife? She stood, moving closer. Your precious reputation? Your unbroken record of convictions? How about the law, Sophia? The justice system you've spent 15 years helping your clients circumvent? She laughed bitterly. The justice system is a game, Daniel. I just play it better than most. It's not a game to me, I said quietly. Never has been. That's your problem, she replied. Always has been. You actually believe in all that righteous bullshit. Justice, truth, fairness. Childish concepts for a complicated world. I studied her face, this woman I'd shared my life with, my bed, my secrets. What happened to you, Sophia? When did you become this person? Her expression hardened. I've always been this person, Daniel. You just refused to see it. Perhaps she was right. Perhaps I'd been willfully blind, choosing to see only what I wanted in the woman I loved. Or perhaps 15 years of twisting truth for a living had finally twisted her as well. I'm meeting with State Attorney Williams tomorrow, she said abruptly. He owes me favors. If you're building a case against me, I'll make sure you're removed from it. You're welcome to try, I replied, keeping my voice even. But the case isn't just mine anymore. It's bigger than both of us now. She stepped closer, close enough that I could smell her perfume. Drop it, Daniel, for both our sakes. You have no idea what I'm capable of when threatened. Actually, I said, I think I'm beginning to understand exactly what you're capable of. She searched my face, looking for weakness, for an opening. Finding none, she grabbed her purse. I'm staying at the Regency tonight. You should think very carefully about your next move. After she left, I poured myself a drink and sat in the darkened living room. Tomorrow would change everything. The warrants were ready, the witnesses secured. Martin Ramirez was on a plane back to testify. There was no turning back. I pulled out my phone and made one final call. Michael, it's time. Execute at 7 a.m. tomorrow. The morning of the arrests, I dressed with particular care. Dark suit, crisp white shirt, power tie, war uniform. My reflection in the mirror showed a man I barely recognized, eyes hardened by betrayal, jaw set with grim determination. I straightened my tie with steady hands despite the hurricane raging inside me. I arrived at the office at 5:30 a.m. to find the task force already assembling, 20 officers and agents preparing to execute multiple simultaneous arrests in a high-profile corruption case. The energy was electric, a palpable tension filling the conference room as badges were checked and weapons secured. Judge Wilson signed everything, Michael reported, handing me a stack of warrants. Teams are ready. Press has been notified to be at campaign headquarters at 7:30. They think it's for a Holloway announcement. I nodded, reviewing the warrants. All in order. All except one, which I slipped into my inside pocket. Sophia's. That one I would serve personally. The paper felt heavy against my chest like a stone weighing me down. Daniel, Michael said quietly, pulling me aside. Last chance to reconsider. Someone else can bring her in. I met his concerned gaze with steel in mine. No, I started this. I'll finish it. At 6:45, I gathered the teams for final instructions. Clean. By the book execution. These are non-violent offenders, but they're desperate people with careers on the line. No risks, no mistakes. We move at exactly 7 o'clock. The teams dispersed to their vehicles. I got into my own car, Michael beside me. You don't have to do this part yourself, he said as we pulled away from the courthouse. Yes, I replied, I do. Holloway campaign headquarters was housed in a renovated warehouse downtown. Even at this early hour, lights blazed from every window. The debate prep would be in full swing. Sophia making final adjustments to talking points, running drills, fine-tuning Holloway's responses. We parked a block away at 6:55. I could see other unmarked vehicles taking positions around the building. I checked my watch, waited. At precisely 7 a.m., my phone buzzed with a text. Go. Michael and I walked calmly toward the main entrance. No sirens, no dramatic SWAT team entrance. This wasn't that kind of arrest. This was white-collar, civilized on the surface, just as Sophia would have wanted it. The young volunteer at the reception desk looked up in surprise as we entered. Sir, the press conference isn't until 7:30. I held up my badge. Assistant District Attorney Daniel Ross, we have warrants to execute. Her eyes widened. I'll need to call someone. That won't be necessary, Michael said firmly, already moving past her toward the interior doors. I followed, heart pounding despite my outward calm. We entered the main campaign floor to find it bustling with activity. Staffers hurried between desks. Phones rang. Printers hummed. Holloway himself stood at the far end by a whiteboard, flanked by advisors. But Sophia wasn't there. A cold dread settled in my stomach. "Where's Sophia Ross?" I asked the nearest staffer, who stared at me in confusion. She called in sick this morning. She said she was staying at the Regency and would join remotely for the final prep. I turned to Michael. "She's running. Get a team to the Regency, now." By then, other officers were streaming in through side entrances. The room fell silent as badges were displayed and commands issued. "James Holloway," called out the lead detective, striding forward. "I have a warrant for your arrest on charges of campaign finance fraud, corruption, and conspiracy to obstruct justice." Chaos erupted. Staffers froze or scattered. Phones were dropped mid-conversation. Holloway himself turned pale, his mouth opening and closing without sound as handcuffs were produced. I was already heading for the exit, Michael following close behind. "I'll drive," he said, taking my keys. "You call it in." I notified dispatch as we sped toward the Regency Hotel. "Suspect Sophia Ross may be fleeing. Send officers to airport, train station, and bus terminals. Vehicle is a black Audi A6, license plate." We screeched to a halt in front of the hotel. The manager met us in the lobby, responding to our badges with immediate cooperation. "Mrs. Ross checked out at 5:45 this morning," he reported, checking his system. "Paid in cash, left no forwarding information." "Security footage?" "This way." The hotel security office yielded grainy but clear footage of Sophia exiting through a side door, wheeling a large suitcase. She was wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses, but it was unmistakably her. "Timestamp is 5:52 a.m., the security officer noted. "More than an hour head start," Michael calculated. My phone rang. Detective Harris from the airport. "Sir, we've checked all morning flights. No Sophia Ross on any passenger list." "She wouldn't use her own name," I replied. "Check security footage for the last 2 hours. I'm sending her hotel exit video for comparison." For the next 4 hours, we chased ghosts. Sophia hadn't used her credit cards, her phone was off, and her passport hadn't been flagged at any border crossing. She had disappeared as thoroughly as she'd made Martin Ramirez vanish. "She planned this," Michael observed as we regrouped at the office. "She must have had an escape route ready." I nodded, mind racing. She knew we were close. Last night she confronted me about Blake cooperating. She must have decided to run rather than face charges. "We'll find her," Michael assured me. "Her face is on every news channel. Her accounts are frozen. She can't hide forever." But I wasn't so sure. Sophia knew how to create new identities for politicians with problematic pasts. She would know how to create one for herself. Back at my desk, I stared at the evidence board, at the web of connections linking Sophia to the witness tampering scheme. The case was solid against Holloway and the others, but without Sophia, it felt incomplete. Hollow. My phone rang again. Unknown number. "Ross," I answered. "You should see your face on TV." Sophia's voice came through clear and composed. "The cuckolded husband, the betrayed prosecutor. It's quite the narrative they're spinning." I signaled to Michael to start a trace. "Where are you, Sophia?" "Somewhere you won't find me," she replied. "At least not for a very long time. There's nowhere you can hide that I won't eventually look," I said, keeping her talking. "You know how I am once I'm on a case." She laughed softly. "Oh, I know exactly who you are, Daniel. I've always known. That's why I prepared for this contingency. Running makes you look guilty." "I am guilty," she said simply. "Of outsmarting you, of protecting my client, of playing the game better than you ever could. But legally, you'll never prove a thing without me." The techs were working frantically to trace the call. I needed more time. "You left a lot of people behind to take the fall," I said. "Blake, Holloway, your entire team. They're all facing serious charges." "Casualties of war," she dismissed. "They knew the risks." "And us, were we just casualties too?" A pause. "We were inevitable, Daniel. Oil and water from the beginning. I saw it that first night when you talked about justice like it was some kind of holy crusade. I knew then we were doomed." "Then why marry me?" I asked, genuinely curious. Because I loved you, she said, a hint of emotion finally cracking through. Despite everything, I loved your certainty, your conviction. I just couldn't live with it anymore. The tech gave me a thumbs up. They had a location. It's not too late, Sophia T. I said, come back. Face this. We can work something out. She laughed again, but it sounded hollow now. Always the prosecutor, looking for a deal. But I'm not coming back, Daniel. Not ever. Sophia, goodbye, Daniel. Don't try to find me. You won't like what happens if you do. The line went dead. Michael looked up from the trace report. Burner phone. Signal bounced through multiple towers. Best guess is somewhere in the northwest, but it's too broad for a search area. I nodded, not surprised. Put out an international alert. She's too recognizable to stay in the country for long. 3 days later, we got our first solid lead. A hotel maid in Vancouver recognized Sophia from the news. By the time Canadian authorities arrived, she was gone, but security footage showed her with dyed blonde hair getting into a taxi. 2 weeks after that, a facial recognition hit placed her in a Mexico City market. Again, she vanished before local police could respond. For 6 months, these near misses continued. Sophia became a ghost, appearing briefly before melting away. Each time, I would drop whatever I was doing and fly to wherever she'd been spotted, always arriving too late. Meanwhile, the case against Holloway and the others proceeded. With Martin Ramirez's testimony and the mountain of financial evidence, convictions were secured across the board. Holloway received 12 years for corruption and conspiracy. Blake got 5 years with possibility of parole after 2. The others received similar sentences. But Sophia's case remained open, her warrant active. In my desk drawer, I kept a map marked with every confirmed sighting, trying to discern a pattern, a destination, anything that might lead me to her. You have to let it go, Michael told me one evening as we shared drinks after work. She's gone, Daniel, maybe for good. She'll make a mistake eventually, I insisted. Everyone does. He studied me over his glass. This isn't just about the case anymore, is it? It's personal. I didn't answer because he was right. Somewhere along the way, finding Sophia had become more than professional duty. It had become obsession. 8 months after her disappearance, I received a package at my office. No return address, postmarked from Argentina. Inside was a flash drive and a note in Sophia's handwriting. For when you are ready to know the whole truth. Cybersecurity cleared the drive. No malware, just video files. I waited until after hours, closed my office door, and plugged it in. Sophia's face appeared on my screen. She looked different. Hair shorter, darker, face thinner, but her eyes were the same. Hello, Daniel, she began. If you're watching this, you're still looking for me. I expected nothing less. She explained that she'd recorded this message 3 months earlier, knowing I'd eventually receive it. I'm sending you this because you deserve to know why I did what I did, she continued. It wasn't just about protecting Holloway or advancing my career. There was more at stake. What followed was a detailed account of a larger conspiracy, one that made the Holloway corruption case seem trivial by comparison. Sophia described a network of political operatives, corporate interests, and even foreign agents who had been manipulating local elections as a testing ground for larger interference. Holloway was just a pawn, she explained. I was using him to get closer to the people really pulling the strings. I had to protect him to maintain my cover. She claimed she'd been gathering evidence against this network for years, working as a double agent of sorts. When my investigation threatened to expose Holloway prematurely, she'd been forced to choose between my case and her larger mission. I couldn't tell you, she said. You're too much of a Boy Scout, Daniel. You would have insisted on doing things by the book. And these people don't play by any book you've ever read. She held up a thumb drive. Everything I've collected is on here. Names, dates, financial records, recordings. Enough to bring down people far more dangerous than James Holloway. I'll send it when I'm safe, really safe, not just hiding. The video ended with something I never expected, an apology. I'm sorry for how I hurt you, she said, her composure finally cracking. You didn't deserve that. Maybe someday you'll understand why I had to do what I did. Until then, goodbye, Daniel. The screen went black. I sat in my darkened office for a long time processing what I'd heard. Was it true, or was this another of Sophia's masterful narratives designed to confuse and distract? 3 days later, I received another package. This one contained the thumb drive she'd promised, along with a newspaper clipping about the arrest of a prominent political consultant in Washington, someone I'd never connected to our case. I spent weeks secretly verifying Sophia's evidence, and to my astonishment, much of it checked out. There was indeed a larger conspiracy, one that extended far beyond our jurisdiction. The rabbit hole went deeper than I could have imagined. I took the evidence to the FBI, explaining its source while omitting the details of how I'd received it. They launched their own investigation, which eventually led to dozens of arrests across multiple states. Sophia remained at large, her name now connected to this larger case in ways I still didn't fully understand. Was she a whistleblower, a manipulator playing all sides, or something in between? 1 year after her disappearance, I received a postcard, no message, just a picture of a beach at sunset, postmarked from Brazil. 2 months later, another from Thailand, then Australia. Small reminders that she was still out there, still watching, perhaps even still working her hidden agenda. I kept each one in my desk drawer alongside her case file, which remained open even as others were closed and archived. Some nights I would spread them across my desk like tarot cards, seeking meaning in their sequence and timing. "She's toying with you," Michael warned after the fourth postcard arrived, "keeping you on the hook." Perhaps he was right, or perhaps, in her own twisted way, Sophia was trying to communicate something she couldn't say directly. The dance continued, hunter and hunted, husband and wife, each move and countermove adding to our strange, unfinished story. Then, 18 months after she'd vanished, everything changed. I was working late, reviewing files for an upcoming trial, when my office phone rang. Almost midnight, far too late for a routine call. "Ross," I answered, expecting a crisis from the night shift prosecutors. "Come to Winslow Park." Sophia's voice came through, tense and hurried. "East entrance, 30 minutes, come alone." "Sophia, where are you? What's 30 minutes, Daniel? Just you. No police, no backup. This is your only chance." The line went dead. I sat frozen, mind racing. Was it a trap? A reconciliation? After 18 months of cat and mouse, why surface now? I should call it in, follow protocol, bring backup, but I knew if I did, she'd vanish again, and I needed answers more than I needed procedure. 28 minutes later, I parked near the east entrance of Winslow Park, a sprawling green space on the edge of the city. At night, it was deserted except for the occasional jogger or dog walker, perfect for a clandestine meeting. I left my gun in the glove compartment. Whatever this was, I wouldn't need it. The park was dark, illuminated only by scattered lampposts along the main paths. I followed the eastern trail, alert for any movement or sound. "Stop there," Sophia's voice came from the shadows to my right. "Turn slowly." I complied, heart hammering against my ribs. She emerged from behind a large oak tree, dressed in dark clothes, hair pulled back severely from her face. She looked thinner, harder, but unmistakably Sophia. "You came alone," she observed, staying several yards away. "As instructed," I confirmed. "Why now, Sophia? After all this time?" "Because it's almost over," she said cryptically. "The end game is approaching." "What end game? The conspiracy you told me about?" She nodded. "The FBI investigation was just the beginning. There are still players at large, people who would kill to protect themselves." "Then turn yourself in," I urged. "We can protect you." A bitter laugh. "No one can protect me, Daniel. Not even you. Especially not you." "Then why reach out? Why risk meeting?" She hesitated, then reached into her jacket pocket. I tensed instinctively, but she only produced a small USB drive, which she held out to me. "The final piece," she explained. "Names, dates, offshore accounts, everything needed to complete the investigation." I didn't move to take it. "Why not send it like the others?" "Because this one's different, more dangerous. I need your word that you'll handle it personally. Give it only to people you trust absolutely." "My word as the man you betrayed?" I couldn't keep the edge from my voice. Your word as the only truly honest man I've ever known, she countered softly. That hit harder than I expected. Despite everything, her assessment of my character still mattered. I stepped forward and took the drive. What happens now? I disappear again, she said simply. For good this time. You could come in with me, I suggested. Not for the first time. Witness protection, immunity deal, a fresh start. She smiled sadly. There are no fresh starts for people like me, Daniel. Only new covers, new lies. Then why help at all? Why not just stay hidden? She looked away toward the distant city lights. Because you were right in the end, about justice, about consequences. Some things are black and white, even in my gray world. A distant siren wailed, making us both tense. Sophia stepped back, preparing to vanish again. I need to know, I said quickly. Was any of it real? Us? She paused, her expression softening for the first time. That was the only real thing in my life, Daniel. The only thing I regret losing. Before I could respond, she was moving, melting back into the shadows. Goodbye, Daniel. Don't follow me. Don't try to find me again. I stood alone in the park for a long time after she'd gone, the USB drive heavy in my palm. The final piece of a puzzle I hadn't even known existed when this all began. Rain began to fall, softly at first, then harder, but I barely noticed as the water soaked through my coat. My mind replayed her last words on an endless loop. That was the only real thing in my life, Daniel. The only thing I regret losing. Headlights swept across the park entrance. A car slowed, then stopped. My instincts screamed danger. I ducked behind a tree, cursing myself for leaving my gun in the glove compartment. The car door opened, and I glimpsed a man in a dark suit scanning the park, his hand inside his jacket in a way that suggested he wasn't reaching for identification. My phone vibrated in my pocket, a text from an unknown number. Run now. Sophia, still watching, still one step ahead. I moved deeper into the darkness as the man entered the park, followed by a second figure. Professional, methodical, not police, something else entirely. The shadows that Sophia had been running from for 18 months had followed her here, had followed us here. Lightning flashed, illuminating the park for a split second, long enough for one of the men to spot me and shout to his partner, long enough for me to see the glint of metal in his hand. I sprinted through the rain-slick paths, navigating by memory and instinct, the USB drive clutched tightly in my fist. Footsteps pounded behind me, gaining ground. A voice ordered me to stop. Then a sound I recognized all too well, the muffled pop of a silenced handgun. The bullet splintered bark inches from my head. These men weren't here to arrest anyone. The evidence on the drive proved explosive, just as Sophia had promised. It led to the indictment of 3 senators, a federal judge, and numerous high-powered lobbyists and consultants. The conspiracy had tentacles in places I'd never imagined. I testified before a closed congressional committee, describing the complex network of corruption while carefully omitting details that would reveal Sophia's continued existence. The men who had chased me through the park that night were eventually identified as private contractors, with ties to a multinational security firm implicated in the scandal. 2 weeks after my testimony, their bodies were discovered in a burned-out car outside Baltimore, a warning to others who might consider talking. Security details became a fixture in my life. My house was swept for bugs weekly. I checked under my car each morning for explosive devices, a habit that continued long after the immediate threat had passed. The price of justice, I discovered, was eternal vigilance. As for Sophia, she kept her word. After that night in the park, the postcards stopped. The occasional sightings ceased. She vanished so completely, it was as if she'd never existed. Yet sometimes in crowded streets or busy restaurants, I'd catch a glimpse of someone with her walk, her gestures, and my heart would stop, only to restart when I realized it was a stranger. Sometimes late at night in my empty house, I wonder if she's watching the news reports of the arrests and trials her evidence triggered. If she feels vindication or just emptiness. If she ever thinks of me as I still think of her. The irony isn't lost on me. I spent my career making people confess their darkest deeds, only to be confessed to by the one person I never suspected. My wife, my opponent, my most brilliant adversary. Sophia was right about one thing. Some truths are black and white, even in a world of gray. Justice demands consequences, even for those we love, especially for those we love. 6 months after our meeting in the park, I received one final package. Inside was a divorce decree, already signed by Sophia, along with a short note. You deserve to move on. I signed the papers and filed them the next day. Not because I wanted to move on, but because it was the only honest thing to do, the only black and white choice in our gray, complicated story. They still call me via confessor around the courthouse. The man who never loses, who always gets the truth. Little do they know that the greatest confession I ever received came from the woman who knew me best. And the truth I found was nothing like the one I thought I was seeking.